Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the poor lighting. I'm going to shoot a quick video right before I go into work. Um, the other day, a buddy of mine at work, Rudolph, ended up asking a question. Does tithe always have to go to the church, or can it be used to help people directly? This is something that a lot of people struggle with. When it comes down to it, we want to be faithful to God and do what's proper with what God has given us. But we sometimes wonder, can we use that 10% to bless someone in need? Or does it all have to go to the church? If you look at what the Bible actually says, you take a step back for a moment and you look at Old Testament tithing. So the concept of tithing is basically you're giving 10% of the first of everything that you have. And back in the day, it was crops, livestock, all that. And you were doing that to support the Levites who served in the temple. That's in Numbers. Since the Levites didn't have any kind of land or income, that's how they survived. But here's something people often miss. The tithe wasn't necessarily just for that. Wasn't just for the priests. In Deuteronomy, it says that in every third year, the tithe was taken to the storehouses in towns. And it was used to feed the Levites and foreigners and orphans and widows. And that in itself is called charity. That's community care. So from the very beginning, tithing wasn't just about maintaining the temple. It was about taking care of people. A lot of people will go through there and they'll reference Malachi, and that's a famous storehouse verse. It says, "Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse. There may be food for my people." People used to say that all the tithes should go to the church. But if you look at the context of my house referred to in the temple as a storehouse, the storehouse is meant the place where God or where food was stored, and the food was for the priests and for the poor. So already we're seeing in the Old Testament that God's design for the tithe was broader than just an institutional upkeep, if you will. Now, you fast forward to the New Testament, and Jesus actually mentions tithing directly in Matthew. He tells the Pharisees that the tithe, or that they tithe even like the tiniest of herbs, because they were taking every little, single herb that they had, and they were tithing 10% of that. But he was telling them that they were ignoring justice and mercy and faithfulness. And he said, you should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former, meaning that you should work on making sure that you focus on justice and mercy and faithfulness moreover than just simply ensuring that you gave the 10%. So Jesus affirms the idea of giving, but he makes it clear that mercy and justice matter even more. And here's where things shift. Under the new covenant, we're no longer bound under the law, because in the Old Testament, it was a commandment that you give that 10%. There's no verse that I could find in the New Testament that commands Christians to give 10%. Instead, we're taught to give generously, sacrificially, and cheerfully. In 2 Corinthians, it says, each one of us must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. So it's not really just about the percentage, it's about your heart. In Acts, it says the early church sold their possessions and shared with anyone that was in need. There were no needy persons among any of them because they were all giving so freely. That money was laid at the apostles' feet, and so, yes, it came to the church leadership, but the goal was to meet real needs. In 1 Timothy and in 1 Corinthians, both books teach that those who preach the gospel should be financially supported. So giving to your church, your pastor, your church family is absolutely biblical, but so is giving to someone in need. In Matthew, it tells us that we feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and visit the sick. We're doing it just as Jesus would have done. He says, whatever you did for one of the least of these, you did for me. That That's pretty powerful. So I mean, what does this mean for us overall in that whole total context? Does the Bible say that you should give your entire tithe to the church? The short answer is no. The Bible teaches us to give. It teaches us to support our spiritual leaders, but it also teaches us to care for the poor and the hurting and the vulnerable. If you're giving part of your tithe to the church and part of it to help a struggling neighbor, a single mom, or a mission project, whatever along those lines, you're still honoring God with your resources and your tithes. And in Proverbs it says, whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will reward them. Whether you give in on a Sunday envelope or hand in some groceries, if it's done for God's glory, it counts as worship. So don't let the legalese, if you will, of giving rob you of the joy of giving. Ask God where he wants your tithes to go. Maybe it's your church, maybe it's someone in crisis, maybe it's both. What it matters, or what really matters, is that your giving comes from the heart. And that love is what Jesus sees and wants to see from his kingdom. And on Sunday mornings and in every moment, not just one day out of the week. He wants us to be joyful givers at all times. So, Rudolph, I hope this answered your question. If not, I'll try better next time. We'll catch you later. Bye.